I've been a hospice nurse for 11 years. I've held the hands of people taking their last breath. I've sat in rooms where the air goes quiet, in a way that has no other name. I've watched families fall apart and come together, and lie to each other in the same hour. I know what dying looks like. I also know what guilt looks like. And greed. I can smell greed the way some people smell rain coming. My name is Nora, and for 11 years, I worked the night shift at Millbrook Hospice in rural Vermont, a small, 42-bed facility tucked between pine trees and frozen roads. I love that place the way you love something that breaks your heart and heals it at the same time. The director was a man named Dr. Callum Voss. Callum was silver-haired and soft-spoken, the kind of man who quoted poetry at staff meetings and shook every patient's hand on his Monday rounds. Families trusted him completely. Donors wrote him checks. The board of directors called him Rintier, a gift to the dying. I trusted him too, for a while. It started with small things I couldn't explain. Patients being transferred to private rooms before their family was notified. Medication logs with timestamps that didn't add up. A new pharmaceutical vendor I'd never heard of. Billing at 4 times the market rate. I mentioned it to my charge nurse. She told me to let it go. I mentioned it to the compliance office. The compliance officer was Callum's brother-in-law. So I did something else. I started writing things down. Every discrepancy, every date, every patient name. Every time a family received a bill for medications their loved one never received. I wrote it down in a small green notebook I kept in the inside pocket of my scrubs. For 14 months, I collected everything quietly, the way snow collects on a roof. Silent and heavier than it looks. Then came the night that changed everything. Room 12, a retired school teacher named Eleanor, 79 years old. 3 days from the end, her daughter, Patricia, had driven 14 hours from Georgia to be with her. It was 2 a.m., and I was charting at the nurse's station when I heard Callum's voice down the hall. He was not supposed to be there. It was the middle of the night. I didn't move. I just listened. "Mrs. Hartley," he was saying to Patricia, his voice all velvet in sorrow. "Your mother's condition has progressed. I want to talk to you about transitioning to our premium comfort protocol. It's a significant upgrade to her final care. But I want to be transparent. It does carry an additional cost." Patricia was crying. Of course she was crying. Her mother was dying at 2 in the morning, and this man was selling her an upgrade. I heard the number he quoted. $18,000 for a protocol. That did not exist in any of our clinical documentation. I felt something cold settle over me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder than anger. Something methodical. I walked to the doorway of room 12. Callum turned and looked at me. And for just a split second, I saw something move behind his eyes. A flicker of awareness. He knew that I knew. "Nora," he said smoothly, "I didn't realize you were on tonight." "I'm always on Tuesdays," I said. I looked at Patricia. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking around a tissue. And I made a decision in that moment that I knew would cost me everything, or give me everything back. "Patricia," I said, my voice as gentle and steady as I could make it, "you don't have to decide anything tonight. Your mother is comfortable. She is being cared for. And nothing about her treatment requires a payment at 2 in the morning." The silence in that room was thick. Callum smiled the way predators smile. Slow, patient, dangerous. "Nora, I think you're overstepping." "Patricia," I continued as if he hadn't spoken, "I'd like to give you the number for the Vermont State Healthcare Advocate. They are available 24 hours a day. They're free, and they would very much like to speak with you." I gave her the number from memory. I had memorized it 6 months ago, for exactly this kind of night. Callum fired me the next morning, officially for insubordination and disrupting patient care. I had my termination letter by 9 a.m. I wasn't surprised. I had my green notebook in my bag. I had 14 months of documented discrepancies in my bag. And I had Patricia Hartley's phone number and the contact information for the Office of the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Already in my recent calls, the federal investigation opened 6 weeks later. What they found was worse than I knew. Callum had been running a ghost billing operation for 7 years, fake protocols, inflated pharmaceutical invoices, predatory add-on fees sold to families in their most vulnerable hours, families who were too exhausted and too grief-stricken to question, a man with silver hair and a soft voice who quoted poetry. The total fraudulent billing exceeded $3.1 million. Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, and families paying out of pocket for a dying mother, a dying father, a dying husband, paying for nothing. He was arrested on a Wednesday. I saw the news alert on my phone while I was eating breakfast at my kitchen table. I didn't feel victorious. I want to be clear about that. I felt hollow, the way you feel after something terrible finally ends, when you realize the ending doesn't undo the thing itself. 43 families were identified as victims of direct financial fraud. Patricia Hartley received a full refund and a formal apology from the state. Eleanor, her mother, had passed peacefully, surrounded by her family, without ever knowing what had nearly happened in her room. That part, I hold on to. Callum Voss was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. His license was permanently revoked. The board of directors, who had called him a gift to the dying, quietly resigned. I was offered my job back. I declined. I now work as a patient advocate for a nonprofit that specifically monitors end-of-life care facilities for financial abuse. I travel, I audit, I sit in quiet hallways at 2 in the morning and I listen. Because here's the thing they never tell you about hospice work. The dying are not weak. They are the most honest humans you will ever meet. They have nothing left to perform, nothing left to pretend. It's the living you have to watch. It's always the living. And I have very good eyes.